All right. Thank you, everybody, so much. My name is Jason Dablow. I'll be talking about Breaking Bad habits, of course, and talking really about how to integrate continuous security throughout your DevOps pipeline. So as people are building more and more applications, in containerized environments, whether that's in EKS, we really want to make sure that as you're doing so in a secure method as well. I'm going to put the video guy through the test because I'm a bit of a wanderer on stage. But so again, my name is Jason Dablow. I have like this unofficial title is Cloud Security Ninja. Ultimately, what it just means is I work with our strategic customers and help them move securely to the cloud and really do so in a much agile fashion. I've been in security for 20 years, been talking DevOps for about 5, container security for about 7. So happy to link up with all of you on LinkedIn as well if you have other questions as well. And I'll be here all week at KubeCon as well at the Trendmicro booth. So when we're talking about application development pipelines, what we're really kind of, as the talk is really focused on, is making sure that we integrate security when you can and as easily as possible as well. Oftentimes there's some chaos between security and application development teams that really causes some friction with developers wanting to push out their applications as quickly as possible to deliver that value to their customers. Whereas security is often seen as maybe a waterfall design and maybe comes in after the fact and slows down that whole process. So I'm going to describe a few methods that will actually accelerate both the application development side as well as making sure that you can do it securely as well. So in the old days of VM application development, as you're developing this code, you're promoting a VM into production once it's done, and you would just throw an agent on there, and now you have protection for that workload, that application that's running within this particular environment. But as we add more and more tools or integrations or orchestration tooling or source repos or whatever that looks like in terms of your application development cycle, you also have, I would say, the opportunity to use these same toolings to really deploy that security framework as well. So here in production, much like we had in the top line, you have basically your security built in. Let me help you there. Yep. Security built into that production environment, really protecting those apps. If there's any security engineers in the room, if anyone has ever been woken up at, say, in the middle of the night because an application team deployed an application, and of course it's security's fault that it broke and it stopped working. If anyone has that job in here, there's a simple way to solve that. And that's put the same protection that you're running in production and do that in a test and staging environment as well. So the application developers that are actually building things in the cloud, they're actually developing on a production security environment that allows them to test the security policies that will be in use in production as well. For all these tool sets that you have within your integration and deployment pipeline, perhaps a good strategy would also be integrating with these tool sets to making sure that you're delivering security the same way that your applications are being delivered. So if you're using, say, AWS OpsWorks to deliver your software in a dynamic fashion, why not use that same tool set to deploy your security tools as well? Similarly, you have an excellent opportunity in the source repos to actually put in all of your security information and actually have that as a single source of truth for not just all of your software deployment, but also all of your security or compliance changes that you're making within this environment as well. And you can simply give that repository to, say, an auditor that can then run a report across all of these changes. And with security that's now built into this same design, you can actually make sure that you're building much more securely and making sure that the configurations that you're changing, not just from an application standpoint, are good, but also from a security structure as well. When you start talking about containers, this is really, you kind of utilize these same tools. You still have source repos, you have your CI/CD pipeline. You have this kind of extra little thing that has your container images called your registry. Think of it like the inventory, I'm sure most of you know. And then also you have all of your runtime components within Kubernetes and EKS as well. So for the host that's running your Kubernetes structure, either your Kubernetes clusters and pods, we also want to make sure that you have that security there as well. So going beyond just protecting the containers, also protecting that host from configuration changes, maybe you have application control, making sure that that host itself is free from vulnerabilities and protected from different exploits that might be occurring. Is one of the key areas, as well as putting that security protection on each one of the containers. So making sure that regardless of what platform you're developing on and where the container is actually launched, making sure you do have that runtime protection that bridges the gap between your secure application delivery and making sure that those applications that exist within your Kubernetes structure are doing only what they're supposed to be doing and not, say, propagating a vulnerability where an attacker could come in and move laterally. So here also, as you're doing your container builds, this is an excellent opportunity to do some container image scanning. I'm going to share with you a CloudFormation template in just a few minutes that you can also run within your own environments that launches a trial from Trendmicro that essentially gives you that opportunity to scan within your build pipelines and making sure that the container images that you're building are free from vulnerabilities, free from malware, as well as implementing a number of compliance checks within that type of environment as well. For the source repos, again, here is you have an excellent opportunity to actually bridge the gap between your runtime protection and what you're doing in terms of committing changes for your application delivery. So within this, you can actually control the policy of a runtime event in security, or you can with Trendmicro tool sets. You certainly should be asking the same from your security tool sets that are running within your environment as well, and making sure that a developer that needs to make a change to, say, protect against a particular vulnerability or configure the runtime protection for different firewall events or making sure that the malware prevention is turned on. All of these policy configurations should also be stored in that source repo. So again, your developers have the ability to implement a true DevOps environment where they're implementing security as well as their application delivery. The tool that I just mentioned, talking about the CloudFormation that deploys on EKS, this also has the ability to give you that continuous scanning for any of those images that exist within your container inventory or registry. So this allows so as Trendmicro, we kind of update our security intelligence to see the latest threats that are occurring in different types of environments. We're continually implementing that inside your container registry and making sure that, again, those images that are already built and stored in your registry are continuously scanned against, again, vulnerabilities, malware, and different types of compliance checks. What we don't want happen is development teams to create all of this value and leave security just leaving to clean up the mess. Unfortunately, this happens in a lot of organizations that I speak to, in that development teams are trying to move so quickly and deliver that value to the customer. Unfortunately, security sometimes gets left behind. And again, as I mentioned at the start, there's often friction between security teams and application development teams. So I always try to say we need to bridge the gap between security and DevOps, development teams, whether you're already implementing a DevOps process or not. But essentially, we need to bridge that gap, so security teams needs to be mindful of what application delivery is trying to do and delivering that value to a customer. And the application teams need to be mindful of security and talk with those teams as well, and making sure that they can implement security earlier on in that chain, so it's less work for everyone. You're delivering that value to that customer, and you're ultimately doing it in a secure fashion without the worry of a possible breach from just trying to accelerate your application delivery too fast. So I have here, so for one, I was not courageous enough to prepare a live demo, especially after seeing the Wi-Fi this morning. But I do have I have a stock video here that I've put together, as well as some screenshots. If you guys want, the CloudFormation template is up there in the corner. I have a bigger QR code towards the end as well if you can't quite scan it. Hopefully someone out there scanning it, just give me a thumbs up that says it's working correctly. But essentially what this does is it builds our container scan tool that does, again, scan those containerized image, builds it in EKS, sets up a small pod within EKS with a few nodes that allows you, again, to access the scanning technology on a trial basis. So as you're kind of going through the CloudFormation template, you're selecting the different availability zones for the deployment. You have a username, a password. There is an activation code here. If you just leave it blank, again, that activates that 30-day trial for you. And then again, finally, input your key pairs so you have access to the pods as well. Once deployed, you now have access to the scan technology. So the scan technology allows you really to look at a number of different, we'll call it threats, or different types of compliance checks required for a container image. Some of these, of course, malware. You know, the Trendmicro name, we're kind of synonymous with doing anti-malware for the life of our company, but also things like finding vulnerabilities. So actually implementing vulnerability scanning to look for, as you're implementing different libraries within an environment, making sure that they're safe. We've seen that public repositories like Docker Hub have various image with coin mining software and other vulnerabilities that's been downloaded millions of times. And it's often a misconception that because this is a publicly hosted repository with different container image, that it's actually a safe place to build from. But you actually need to implement your own sort of scanning tools, because as different vulnerabilities continue to come out and different versions, things continually upgrade, you also need that continuous check for these images that development teams are building from. So it really prevents that supply chain attack or other types of attack in bringing down a public image and first knowing it's safe before you're building on it. Other things that we do is compliance checklists, so CIS benchmark testing, if you want to do IOC sweeping, all included in this tool as well. As part of this, so I have some scan details here for a sample image that we scanned that had some vulnerabilities in it. You can see that it takes the container layer by layer, finds the different vulnerabilities based on how it's brought in. Doesn't have to be installed from package manager. It could also be installed from source as well. And essentially this allows you to, again, every image of the layer is scanned. And as things are patched, we remediate the scan results as well. So we're only showing you what's actually involved in that final container image. So we can see we have some vulnerability detections, a malware detection down at the bottom, and as I mentioned, kind of it goes through layer by layer. So I mentioned the basically scanning within the registries from that continuous scanning point of view, but we also have the ability to integrate in with a build pipeline. This allows us to really take those orchestration tools that we were showing before. You could also do this with code build, code pipeline. This is completely API driven. And this really allows you to, again, implement the scanning structure as part of your build pipeline. So here we have a Jenkins deployment with a plugin that essentially allows our scanning technology to integrate with that build process that actually goes through and builds those images. You can see here that as part of this plugin, we're making a call to our Smart Check tool, that's the container scanning tool, really to basically deliver that scanning as part of this process. So here we're going to, within Jenkins, we're going to push one of our build processes to making sure that one of these builds goes through after we've integrated that scan pipeline, or excuse me, that scan plugin. And what you see here is that as part of your Jenkins workflow, a vulnerability was found. And instead of building it, we're going to place the scan results into that build project and give you all of the information about that vulnerability that existed. You can see the policy at the top here, so you can set it to fail this build structure based on different vulnerabilities that might be seen. And at the bottom, you have the exact vulnerability details about the CVE number, what actually caused that to trigger. So now your development team is armed with the proper information that they can do to remediate this particular vulnerability. In this case, we're just going to update Alpine to the latest release. It was deploying with version 8.0. We're going to deploy 8.5, latest and greatest, to really solve these vulnerabilities within this particular environment. And then we're going to just do this deployment again. So as part of the same deployment, the next is going to go through that same flow, hit that plugin that's running the container scanner tool, and essentially give you the results that you're looking for in terms of being able to build that image because there's no vulnerabilities attached to it, which I'm talking a little fast. It's showing up right now. So essentially here you can see now that the smart check scan was completed with no vulnerabilities found. And so this one is now pushed to the registry. Your registry now is we'll call it a safe haven for clean images. But again, we have that integration with that as well. So we can continuously scan those registries as our technology improves or new vulnerabilities are found within a particular environment. So with that, again, that bigger QR code for anybody. Again, I have my LinkedIn location on. If you just go to my network, add, find nearby, I'll show up there, or you could just add me via email. I'll open up to questions. If anyone has any questions, happy to answer those. All right, so for those of you just attending today, I will be at the Trendmicro booth. We have lots of other demos that we can certainly share with you, as well as I'll be at KubeCon all week as well at the Trendmicro booth there. Hope to see all of you and appreciate your attendance, and thank you so much.